Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the final 3 episodes of Season 2 of Andor, which of course were the final 3 episodes of the entire series. The first one was called Make It Stop. As the episode opens, another year has passed. It is now 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. Luthen and Clea prepare for a mission which starts with Luthen meeting Lonnie, who says that it seems Dedra is coming for Luthen and that Lonnie accessed Dedra's files. But he wants Luthen to immediately evacuate him before he says what he found because the Empire will be coming for him. So he only tells Luthen that the Empire is building a weapon before Luthen executes him. Luthen then goes to his shop to destroy his backroom equipment, but is interrupted by Dedra arriving, pretending to be a customer who wants to sell him something, which she reveals to be a particular Imperial Starpath unit, before revealing that she knows who he is, and confronting him, after which he tells her that she's too late because the rebellion is everywhere, and then seemingly killing himself to avoid interrogation, though he doesn't immediately die as medics are called in. Clea then retrieves some items from the safe house where Cassian and Bix had lived, as we see her tearfully experience a flashback to when Luthen was a military officer during a battle during which Clea was hiding on his ship. Then we see Dedra take control of the hospital floor where Luthen is being kept alive, as Clea goes there, posing as a patient before electronically picking some locks on some lockers in order to acquire medical personnel clothing. Much to her surprise, Dedra is approached and arrested on Partagaz's orders. In another flashback, Clea accompanies Luthen to a pawn shop and negotiates a better deal on an object than he was getting. Back in the present, Clea appropriates a random patient and tries to get to Luthen's floor but is stopped. In yet another flashback, she accompanies Luthen on another pawn shop trip as they witness prisoners being marched through the town, which Clea insists on observing, causing Luthen to walk away as the prisoners are executed by firing squad, over which Clea confronts Luthen, asking when they'll fight back, to which he responds by saying that they already are to the extent that they can at this point in time. Back in the present, Clea creeps up closer to Luthen's floor, which necessitates her killing an Imperial guard. She then has yet another flashback to when she was dressed up and dining with Luthen, and they disagreed seemingly over tactics before Luthen remotely blew a nearby bridge. In the present, she detonates some bombs remotely to draw the Imperials away from Luthen's room, at which point she makes her way there, killing a couple of more Imperials on the way, at which point she disconnects the machinery keeping Luthen alive before tearfully kissing him on the forehead and fleeing, which is where the episode ended. The next episode was called Who Else Knows? As it starts, the ISB starts going through the hospital with a fine-tooth comb to figure out how someone got past all the security. Dedra is interrogated by Krennic, who thinks she gave Lonnie her access codes, and who confronts her about not having reported being sent files she shouldn't have had, which she didn't report because she wanted to find Luthen. She tells Krennic about Clea and insists she be found before he heads off, as the ISB goes through security camera footage at the hospital, on which they see images of Clea and realize that she was working alone. Clea, meanwhile, retrieves some equipment from inside a wall at the safe house, with which she seems to send out a coded message, which reaches Will on Yavin, where Cassian is playing a game with a fellow rebel and K2SO, when Will interrupts so as to tell him about the message. Krennic orders the ISB investigator from the hospital to disseminate Clea's picture super widely, with the tagline that she escaped from a hospital with an infectious disease, and that she must be found, and Partagaz confronts him about the Death Star not being ready yet. Clea's message comes through again on Will's comms equipment, and this time Cassian hears it and immediately sets out to go somewhere, leaving Yavin without clearance. The ISB investigator from the hospital seeks out Dedra in her cell for advice on how to catch Clea, and she tells him to try to find transmissions that might be going out by unconventional means, like pulse codes, at which point he goes back to Luthen's shop to continue investigating. Cassian arrives on Coruscant and signals Clea, who responds as their signal is received in the shop. Cassian then lands near the safe house as the ISB closes in on an Imperial shuttle, and communications are jammed before the Empire then sends a fake signal to Clea, who is surprised to see Cassian when he arrives, whom she immediately tells everything she knows about the weapon to. Cassian tells her he's going to take her to Yavin, but she doesn't want to go. Sensing that Cassian is in danger, K2SO goes on the warpath and attacks the Imperials, destroying the communications systems on their shuttle. And that's where the second episode ended. The third and final episode was called Jedha Kyber Urso. And as it starts, Clea agrees to go with Cassian, and they start to make their way out as the Imperial troops make their way down the hall, and end up finding our heroes, at which point a firefight ensues, but K2SO arrives at the safe house and deals with the Imperials, allowing our heroes to escape. On Yavin, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma have an unpleasant conversation over comms with Saw Gerrera as Cassian's ship arrives back, at which point he briefs Mon and the leadership about the Death Star project, only to find them skeptical given that the source is Luthen, at which point he reads them the riot act for not believing in Luthen, and then visits Kleya in the infirmary, as she was injured during the rescue. Mon asks Vel to suss out whether Luthen's intel is reliable, so she talks with Cassian, who tells her what he knows. In his office, before he's taken off to be punished for his unit's failure vis-a-vis Luthen and Kleya, as well as over Dedra, Partagaz kills himself. Vel suggests that Cassian should reach out to Bix, but he decides against it because he knows that as long as he doesn't go anywhere near her, she's safe. Bail visits Cassian to send him on a mission after seemingly coming to the realization, as various other factors come to light, that there's a good chance that what Cassian told the leadership was true, and on his way out, Cassian sees the Force healer that had previously told him he was important there at the base. Before the episode, the season, and the series ends, we see that the Death Star is getting ever nearer completion, Dedra in prison, and Bix back on the farm planet carrying a baby. And then, during the end credits, the original Star Wars main theme was played, and thus ends Andor. So, I really, really liked this show in the first season, and I very much enjoyed the second season, though at times not as much as the first season. That said, these last 3 episodes were absolutely fantastic. Complete 10s, each of them. The character development that we got for both Kleya and Luthen vis-a-vis the flashbacks was just amazing. It rounded out the characters so well and really just makes you feel the gravity of what they spent their lives doing. And it really makes you feel the weight of Kleya having to end Luthen's life in order to protect the rebellion and to defeat the Empire. And I thought that was fantastic. You know, in Rogue One, Cassian talks about how everyone in the rebellion has done horrible things to protect the rebellion and defeat the Empire. And clearly, Kleya having to kill Luthen, and for that matter, Luthen trying to kill himself, would be in that category. And other things that we saw them do in this series would be as well. For example, Luthen killing Lonnie because he was a loose end and because there wasn't time to get him out. And, you know, you can look back to previous episodes where other horrible things were done, like Luthen killing Mon Mothma's lifelong friend because he was a liability. And, you know, this whole series was full of events like that, which just were so powerful and so meaningful that it just made the show great. And then, you know, there's the other side of it. There's the Empire side, where you see Partagaz, as they say, eat his gun, kill himself, rather than face punishment at the hands of the Empire for, you know, things going wrong that they were blaming on him. It just speaks to how brutal the Empire is. But at the same time, makes you feel a sense of justice because of all the horrible shit he did. So in that way, it's good. And then, you know, Dedra ends up going to prison because they blamed her for other things. And while that isn't equivalent to her dying, it's pretty bad, especially for her who's always so keen to have control of things, which, you know, is no longer going to be the case for her. And, you know, then there's Bix, who Cassian knew he had to stay away from, even though he wanted to be with her, because it would have made her unsafe. And as it turns out, it would also have made his child, or what we can really safely assume was his child, that he didn't know about, unsafe. And, you know, I watched Rogue One for the second time today, because the first time I watched it, let's just say I didn't see it in a theater or on Disney Plus or DVD. And it wasn't the most complete Rogue One viewing experience that it could have been, to the extent that not everything came across the way I think the producers intended it to in the manner that I watched it. So I watched it again today, having watched all of Andor, to remind myself where everything went for Cassian and Mon and one or two of the other characters, Krennic, for example, afterwards, so that I could have the whole series of events from the beginning of Andor Season 1 through the end of Rogue One in my head in a more cohesive manner. And the other thing that Andor did, it turns out, was set up Rogue One very, very well. You know, a lot of times you get a series that then gets a prequel series, or you get a series of films that get a prequel, or a single film that gets a prequel. and they don't really match up well because they didn't take as much care as they needed to make sure that things matched up and weren't, in at least some ways, unfaithful to the prior production. Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I thought that was to the show's credit. And, it was just a great series. Season one was great. Season two was pretty darn good. The last three episodes were definitely great. And I couldn't praise it more highly. I think it was fantastic. And Diego Luna has a fan for life in me. I'll say that. But that's really it. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, may the force be with you.